Good day, citizens of Neverwinter. Thank you for viewing this video. If you find any information presented in this video useful, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit me up on Twitch. My Twitch channel is twitch.tv/lord_willow_. Today I am going to be talking about some rogue builds, what gear and enchantments you should be slotting, as well as rotations that should get you ready to compete in the Paingiver charts. Today I'm going to start on gear. So there are some things in here that I'm running that are not quite best in slot at this point. So the rogue is kind of one of the characters I like to play around on, and just generally poke around, have some fun, and then maybe do some PvP. I'm not going to get into PvP builds today. I'm going to primarily talk about PvE builds, um, AOE rotations, and single target rotations, and go from there. So from a gear perspective, you want to go for an armor piece, a headpiece, for when you're running under mountain for Lair of the Mad Mage, for Master Expeditions, and just generally running around under mountain for the heroic encounters or the runic encounters, I should say. You're going to want to go for the like the Hood of the Spy Guild or the Successor gear, which is going to give you 5% extra damage in under mountain. And like a theme for many other DPS classes, I'm not going to list out each piece of gear, but you want gear that's giving you percent damage increase. I will make a call out, like on some other classes where dailies aren't a huge thing. The Fearbringer wrists are actually best in slot for a lot of classes. That's not the case with the Rogue. You're going to find that your dailies hit really hard on the Rogue, and you're going to want to use them really often to proc some of the mechanics, both from an AoE and a single target perspective. So I actually strongly recommend running the Terror Grips for right now. Of course, the rumor mill is out and about that there may be a nerf coming to some of this equipment in the near future. But again, it's a rumor. So as of right now, when this build video is being made, these gear items are best in slot. So Furred Kyono, the bear, Terror Grips, Heels of Fury. If you can have two Shadowstalker rings, meaning a +4 and +5 Shadowstalker ring, you're going to want to run that. And of course, the Demon Lord set, or as some people call it, the Baphomet set. And uh, Unfortunately, this is the best in the slot set right now. It is doing the most damage. Also, you're going to want to run the shirt that gives you the plus 3% damage when you're above 75% stamina, as well as the pants that give you some action point gain. From a primary artifact perspective, the Wyvern coated knives are good. The Soulsight crystal is good. A fully upgraded Tales of Old artifact is really good on trash, and it also gives you back some AP gain. Uh, from an ability score perspective, like a lot of other characters, I am running Charisma as my secondary stat, and I'm obviously running Strength as well. So if you look at the Strength is giving you some stamina regen, and it's giving you a physical damage boost, whereas the Charisma is improving your recharge speed and giving you some extra companion influence. I think a solid secondary choice to Charisma, if you want to go a different route, is to go with Dexterity, which gives you a little bit more movement speed and improved crit severity. When we come to the mounts, we can talk about insignias. I'm not running any best in slot insignias in here right now. Use these to fill in the stats you're missing. Uh, the best in slot is definitely going to be to slot dominance where you can. Dominance gives you power and companion influence. Definitely the best way to go. From an insignia bonus perspective, I'm really not running anything in here that's best in slot. In fact, Barbarian's Revelry is probably a must-have in this because the Barbarian's Revelry, uh, it's every time you crit, you're doing some healing. So it's like having a crit heal. It's definitely worth running. You should definitely have it. And if you have access to legendary mount, uh, you're going to want to go for like the flail snail to get some more action point gain, so you can do dailies more often. When it comes to companions, you're going to want to have an augment summoned and out there. You're going to want to try to get your bolster up. So you can see that I'm only at a 10% bolster right now on this. I really would be much better served by, say, a 14% or 15% bolster, but I can fix that by upgrading some of these companions in here to, so if I upgraded each of these to at least purple, that gets me up closer to that 15% max bolster. When you're talking about stats in here, so there's a lot of good options. Use your companion powers to boost your stats, and then make sure that you're again getting your purple gear. Keep all the companion gear that drops as you're leveling. It can really make a big difference, right? And again, the higher you upgrade the companions in here, you can see, so there's the baby deep crows at legendary, and at legendary, if I slot it in there, that's 8,000 more power. So use these to improve your stats where needed. Stack power. Power is a great one to stack in here, and then go from there. From a boons perspective, so I look at the campaign boons, and again, this is kind of my cookie cutter campaign, build loadout. So this is my trash loadout. So my trash loadout actually has some different boon choices. Uh, it's all cookie cutter down below: action point gain, as well as recovery, movement speed, as well as companion influence. Uh, and then we get up into the third tier. I take Deathly Rage for my trash loadout. As for my single target loadout, I take Bloodlust. Again, it's a little more action point gain, but it seems to work a little better on single targets because I'm not relying on a kill, right? When I come to powers, so again, this is my trash loadout. So I am, going in there and I'm doing as much as possible. I've got a couple of rotations that I've worked on. They both seem to work really well situationally. They both use the same set of powers, the same feats, the same class features. It's just change in how you manage your rotation. So I'm running Cloud of Steel as well as Duelist Flurry. So Cloud of Steel is kind of my go-to. It's got a really quick cast time. It doesn't hit too hard, but it is a ranged attack. Um, and it's really great for just kind of spreading the love around, right? My go-to at will is Duelist Flurry. This stacks a bleed effect on. Uh, that being said, Gloaming Cut is also a really good power. It hits really hard for a rogue. Uh, for it hits really hard for a rogue at will, and it does give you some stealth regen back. It's really handy, and so sometimes I'll slot that out instead of Cloud of Steel. But again, my go-to is Duelist Flurry. I run that all the time. From an encounter perspective, I'm running Blade Flurry. I'm running Path of the Blade, and I'm running Smoke Bomb. So you can run this rotation in a couple of different ways. There's three unique ways that pretty much everyone's running a rotation that's very similar to this. That's really doing top tier damage in AOE. So option number one, you stealth. I'm sorry. Option number one, you pop Path of the Blade before you hit the mobs. You go stealth. You drop Smoke Bomb on the mob, which is now granting combat advantage. It's granting you and your allies combat advantage against enemies inside the smoke bomb for the duration of smoke bomb. And then what you can do is you can do Blade Flurry, and then do your at wills and finish the target off. Usually, for simple mobs, uh, you may not even get the Blade Flurry with this combination. Another rotation that works really well, and again situationally, is come in. So I'm pretending there's no dailies right now, right? So you come in, your dailies are not up. You go stealth, you drop Path of the Blade, drop Smoke Bomb, do your flurry. Path of the Blade, it's if you're not dropping it from stealth, Path of the Blade lasts a long time. It does lots of little damage ticks over a really wide area. It's really useful power. But if you drop it from stealth, it lasts half as long, but it goes twice as fast. It's a very concentrated, big AoE. Unfortunately, it doesn't proc like the Lost Moth set. Otherwise, the Lost Moth set for this loadout would be fantastic. But it does, like almost around 90 ticks of damage overall. during its duration. So it's quite a few ticks of damage. It's a really useful power. And then the third option really is you come in with stealth. Um, you use Blade Flurry because when you're stealth, you get an extra hit with Blade Flurry. So basically, you get 2 hits with Blade Flurry. It's also a hard hitting counter. It's got a nice sweep on it. So those are all viable. I mean, I suggest you kind of figure out what works best for you in that rotation. Uh, I'll admit, when I'm running in a group, I tend to favor dropping Path of the Blade from stealth. Um, when I'm not running in a group, I tend to prefer dropping Smoke Bomb from stealth. From a daily perspective, we're looking at Whirlwind of Blades and Shocking Execution. So Whirlwind of Blades, again, I fit that into my rotation. So here's another example. Let's say my daily is up. And so what I can do is I can come in, uh, I I stealth, I drop Smoke Bomb, I drop my Whirlwind of Blades, and then because I'm feeded for it, I have my stealth meter full again, and I drop Path of the Blade. In all but the hardest enemies in AoE, they're all going to be dead by that point, especially if you're stacking power and your stats like you need to be. From a class feature perspective, I'm running Tactics, so that increases my action point gain by 10%, and I am running an Invisible Infiltrator. So when I use a daily power, my stealth meter is refilled for 5 seconds afterwards, and my damage is increased by 5%. Um, and again, for AoE, so from a feat perspective, I run Toxic Blades. I found that Toxic Blades for AoE situations, it just adds another dot. And think about it this way: uh, you're basically with between Smoke Bomb ticks on AoE and the Path of the Blade encounter power. You're playing like bleeds all over the place, right? It's a really good hit. And then I'm running Knife's Edge, so activating my daily power reduces my cooldowns by 4 seconds. And then I'm using Skullcracker. So um, these are both great choices, and I think this. I'm going to leave that up to you, which you prefer. I just think that Skullcracker works a little better than AoE in AoE situations, and so I'm running Skullcracker. And then I run Back Alley Tactics. I think that one is playing out better than the other choice. Again, it's pretty good. And then that's all about dealing more damage when my action points are low. And then I'm running Execution. So when an enemy has under 20% life, my attacks have a 10% chance to execute the target with that extra 200 damage. So I'm just going to before I go on to my next loadout, I'm going to quick talk about stat points here. So your two most important stats are going to be accuracy first and then armor pen. If you are not meeting the cap for the uh, content you're running on that, it is a big damage loss. So to give you an example, a rough idea, Lair the Mad Mage, the stat caps are generally 68,000. I need 68,000 armor pen at least, and 68,000 accuracy to run Lair the Mad Mage. For most of the level 80 content, I believe that cap is 60,000. I'd have to go take a look. And when you're running scaled content, level 70 content, that cap is going to be 57,000. So when you're running level 70 content, like say Tiamat, for example, which was just re-released, if your armor pen and accuracy are under 57,000, you're going to take a big damage loss hit. And remember that if you're under cap on accuracy, what's going to end up happening is uh, enemies are going to be able to deflect your attacks, and whenever an enemy deflects their attack, they take that's half the damage, right? So if the enemy has a 1% chance to deflect your attack, that means 1% of the time you're going to be doing 50% less damage to that target. So it's really important to get these stats up. The other stats you want to really pay attention to is making sure that you're capping your crit, getting your combat advantage up, and building a lot of power. Power is a big thing still on the rogue. It's a big thing on all the DPS. And then you want to make sure that you have decent crit severity as well. So I'm going to go kind of back to the builds here. So from equipment and boon perspective, except for the call out I made earlier, When you switch to a single target loadout, so again, I'll make this call out on the Boon. I'm running Bloodlust. You can see there on the Boon. And then I got okay, good. Got a companion right there. And then so from my rotation and from the powers I use, a single target, I'm using Duelist Flurry and I'm mixing in Gloaming Cut. Gloaming Cut hits really hard. It's just got a slower cast time. And so what I do is I mix those in. So Duelist Flurry has a chance to add a bleed effect. The bleed effect actually stacks up really fast. So what I do is I stack up that bleed effect and then I switch over to Gloaming Cut. Again, Gloaming Cut hits really hard and then gets me back into stealth so I can leverage my stealth mechanics. From an counter perspective, I'm using Lashing Blade, Dazing Strike, and Assassinate. There's a couple different options to Dazing Strike. I just prefer Dazing Strike, even though it's got a little bit weaker hit. It seems to just be very solidly reliable. Assassinate, I try to only use Assassinate when I have my stealth meter full and I drop it from stealth because it is 25% stronger when you attack from stealth. And then from a daily perspective, I run Whirlwind of Blades and Shocking Execution. Shocking Execution is one of the most powerful daily powers in the game. It hits hard. It is a fantastic daily. You want to leverage this as much as possible. Its cast time is a little long at 1.5 seconds, but that's okay. And then you can see that from a class features perspective, I'm running the same class features as my AoE loadout. So again, I pop my daily and I get stealth refilled again. So what I can do from that is, you know, I come in, I stealth, I hit assassinate on the target, I pop my daily, I hit stealth again, and then I can lashing blade the target for even more damage, right? So, when I'm stealthed, I'm adding 50% crit severity to Lashing Blade. So now I've got back-to-back big attacks. Um, the Rogue is super, super bursty on single target damage, and if you're building your stats right, I've seen Rogues just raffle stomp other classes on single target damage. They're not quite as competitive on AoE, but you can get them up there with kind of the concepts I talked about from an AoE loadout perspective. When we're talking about feats for single target, so I run Assassin's Target. So I'm not using this Toxic Blades. Instead, I use the Assassin's Target, and then I'm using Knife Edge as well. You can see that I went with a different choice on the single target. So I went with the Duelist Expertise for single targets versus the other. Again, this is more about getting that bursty effect because this will actually take your damage up to 15%. And increases your deflect by up to 15%. So it makes you a little tankier, and you're doing a little bit more damage for a short period of time. Then again, I'm still running back alley tactics. So again, you deal up to 10% more damage based on how few action points you have. So when my action point meter is low, I'm dealing more damage. And then execution, of course. Again, it's all about getting that bursty damage out. That's all I have for this video. Again, if you found any of this information useful, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit me on Twitch. My Twitch channel is Twitch TV /Lord_Willow_. And I thank you for watching this video.